The fluorescent lights of the Hallwell and Knox Marketing Group office hummed with a monotonous, soul-crushing drone, a sound that had been the soundtrack to my life for 12 long years. At 45, I was part of the furniture, a fixture as reliable and as overlooked as the industrial-grade carpet beneath my worn-out office chair. My corner of the open-plan space, affectionately dubbed the Operations Cave, was a fortress of filing cabinets and stacked project binders, a testament to a decade of dedication. From this small, unglamorous command center, I was the invisible backbone of the entire company. I managed every vendor relationship, knew every client's preference by heart, and had designed most of the workflow systems that kept the creative and account teams from descending into absolute chaos. I wasn't just an operations coordinator. I was the institutional memory of the place, the human cog that ensured all the other, shinier cogs could turn without grinding to a halt. And I was about to be fired. I knew it wasn't personal, not in the way a friend might betray you. To them, it was just business. But after 12 years of pouring my life into this company, of sacrificing weekends and evenings to meet impossible deadlines, it felt devastatingly personal. The signs had been there for 6 months, subtle at first, then as glaring as a neon sign in a dark alley. It started with the budget meetings. I, who managed all the vendor contracts and operational expenses, was suddenly uninvited. The meetings were now labeled strategic financial planning and held behind the closed door of the main conference room, a room I usually had booked solid for client presentations. Then came the hushed conversations that would cease the moment I rounded a corner. I'd see my manager, Dana Caldwell, huddled with someone from upper management, their voices low and urgent. They would pull apart the second they saw me, offering tight, insincere smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Dana, in particular, had always treated me with a certain condescending air, as if my role was a necessary but rather tedious utility, like plumbing. She was a woman who wore her ambition like a sharply tailored blazer, impeccable, expensive, and designed to make a statement. Her dark hair was always in a perfect, severe bob, and her smile, when she bothered to use it, was a thin, dismissive slash of red lipstick. In the last few months, her dismissiveness had curdled into something colder, more distant. She started looking through me, not at me. My friend Jennifer in accounting, a wonderful, gossipy woman who knew where all the financial bodies were buried, had given me the final, damning clue. They're running a cost-benefit analysis on the whole operations department, Lisa, she'd whisper to me over a coffee break, her eyes wide with a mixture of sympathy and alarm. And by department, they mean you. That was when the cold dread solidified into a cold, hard plan. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to be a tragic, unavoidable circumstance. If they were going to cut me loose, I was going to make sure I had a parachute, a golden one, woven from the very threads of indispensability they had taken for granted for so long. My revenge wouldn't be loud or explosive. It would be quiet, methodical, and devastatingly effective. I called it my transition preparation. For the next several months, I became a quiet archivist of my own knowledge. I spent my lunch breaks and late evenings documenting everything. Not company property, I was meticulous about that. I wouldn't steal a single proprietary file. Instead, I documented the intricate web of processes I had created. The complex workarounds for our buggy project management software, the specific, unwritten client preferences that ensured repeat business, the personal relationships I'd cultivated with vendors that secured us favorable rates and last-minute miracles. Every contact list, every workflow chart, every shortcut I had developed through years of experience was carefully transferred to my personal drives. These weren't the company's assets. They were the fruits of my labor, the very essence of the value I provided, a value they were about to discard. During this time, the calls from Kevin Harrison at BrightPath Creative Solutions, our biggest competitor, became more frequent. He'd been trying to poach me for years, impressed by my reputation for efficiency. "Lisa, you're a legend," he'd said on our last call. "When you're ready to be appreciated for what you're worth, my offer stands." In the past, I had always politely declined, citing my loyalty to Hallwell and Knox. The irony was almost laughable now. Loyalty was a one-way street, and I was about to be pushed into oncoming traffic. The day finally came. "Lisa, can I see you in the conference room?" Dana's voice was clipped, devoid of any warmth. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I had been practicing this moment in my mind for months. I walked into the sterile, glass-walled room. The long, polished table reflected the grim, gray sky outside. Dana was there, of course, seated with her perfect posture. Beside her was a woman from HR I barely recognized, her expression a mask of practiced solemnity. She was the corporate executioner, here to make sure the beheading was clean and legally sound. "Lisa," Dana began, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "As you know, the company is undergoing some restructuring to optimize our operational efficiency." She gestured vaguely, as if restructuring were some abstract force of nature and not a calculated decision made by the people in the boardroom upstairs. "After a thorough review," she continued, a smug little smile playing on her lips, the same smile she always wore when delivering bad news, "we've made the difficult decision to eliminate your role." The HR representative nodded gravely, as if this was some tragic, unavoidable circumstance rather than a cold, calculated decision to cut costs. My salary, my 12 years of service, reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet they had decided to delete. I sat there, looking at these two women who thought they held all the cards. Dana Caldwell, my manager for the past 3 years, who had never once taken the time to understand what I actually did, now looked at me with an expression of faint pity, as if I were a stray cat she was shooing away. The HR woman kept glancing at her watch, clearly eager to get this unpleasant task over with and move on to her next meeting. I took a slow breath, letting the silence hang in the air for a beat longer than was comfortable. I had envisioned this moment, rehearsed my lines. The words came out easily, my voice calm and professional, betraying none of the turmoil that had churned inside me for months. "I totally understand," I replied. Dana blinked. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. She had clearly been expecting tears, protests, perhaps some kind of dramatic, undignified reaction. She was anticipating a messy, emotional scene that would reinforce her narrative of me as a disposable, low-level employee. My composure was not part of her script. She stammered for a moment. "Well, that's good. We appreciate your professionalism about this." She shuffled her papers, looking almost disappointed that I wasn't falling apart. "Your last day will be this Thursday. Please pack up your desk by the end of the day." "Of course," I said, my voice even. "My name is Lisa Granger," I thought to myself, a silent affirmation. "I'm 45 years old, and I have just been fired from the only job I have known for over a decade." But what Dana and her HR sidekick didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this exact moment since the rumors started circulating 6 months ago. While they thought they were blindsiding me, I had been 3 steps ahead, quietly building my exit strategy. The writing wasn't just on the wall, it was written in neon letters, and I knew how to read them. "Is there anything else you need from me?" I asked, standing up and smoothing down my skirt. The movement was deliberate, a signal that this meeting and my time here was over on my terms. Dana shook her head, a little flustered. "Just make sure to return your badge and laptop when you leave on Thursday." "Of course," I said again, a faint smile touching my lips. I was already planning how Tuesday morning was going to unfold. They had no idea what was coming, but I could barely contain my excitement. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of the most satisfying week of my professional life. Walking back to my desk after that meeting, I felt strangely liberated. The weight of feigned ignorance and forced smiles was gone. 12 years of my life at Hallwell and Knox Marketing Group, and it was ending not with recognition or gratitude, but with a cold, corporate dismissal. As I passed my colleagues' desks, I wondered how many of them knew what was happening. I saw averted eyes and a few sympathetic, fleeting glances. The office felt different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. My desk was tucked away in the operations corner, surrounded by the filing cabinets that held the paper ghosts of projects past and the constant hum of the industrial-sized printer. It wasn't glamorous, but from this spot, I had managed the intricate web of relationships and processes that kept this company running. All of it had been my domain for over a decade. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jennifer. Heard about the meeting. You okay? I smiled. Better than okay, I texted back. Trust me on this one. I opened my laptop and began what I liked to call my final transition preparation. I had already been having conversations with competing firms for weeks. Not actively job hunting, mind you, but staying connected with industry contacts who had been trying to poach me for years, particularly Kevin Harrison at Brightpath Creative Solutions. He had been persistently suggesting that I consider making a move. The offer stands whenever you're ready, he had said just last week over coffee. We need someone with your expertise and client relationships. At the time, I had smiled politely and said I wasn't ready to leave. But now, sitting at my desk, knowing that Thursday would be my last day, I felt ready to make that call. I also drafted a careful email to a select list of clients, not from my company account, but from my personal one, to be sent later. These were the clients with whom I had built strong, personal relationships, the ones who trusted my judgment implicitly. The next 2 days were a blur of feigned productivity and quiet goodbyes. On Thursday afternoon, I packed the last of my personal items into a small box. I left my badge and laptop on the desk as instructed and walked out of the Hallwell and Knox office for the last time. I didn't look back. The weekend was a blissful reprieve. On Sunday evening, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and my laptop. I had a signed offer letter from Brightpath Creative Solutions to be their new director of client relations, with a start date of the following Monday and a salary increase that made my 12 years of underpayment at Hallwell and Knox seem like ancient history. The real satisfaction, however, would come on Tuesday. At exactly 10 a.m. on Tuesday, I was at a celebratory lunch with Kevin Harrison when my phone began to buzz. It was Patricia Chun, the formidable marketing director at Henderson Industries, one of Hallwell and Knox's largest and most prestigious clients. Lisa, darling. Her voice was crisp and direct. I heard through the grapevine that you're no longer with Hallwell and Knox. Is that true? I glanced around the bustling bistro, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Yes, Patricia. My role was eliminated last week. That's unfortunate for them, Patricia said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I don't suppose you'd be interested in hearing about some new opportunities we've been considering? We're thinking of bringing some of our marketing work in-house, and we need someone who understands our brand voice. This was an unexpected but welcome development. I'd certainly be open to discussing it, I said. Are you available for lunch today? I know it's short notice, but we're moving quickly on this. I think I can make that work, I replied, my heart soaring. While I was having the most productive lunch of my career, the chaos at Hallwell and Knox was just beginning. At 8 a.m. on Tuesday, the first security alert triggered. My personal login credentials, which had been deactivated Thursday evening, were tied to more systems than anyone realized. The client database, the vendor authorization portal, the digital asset library, and the project management system. All of them would lock down when they couldn't verify my access. I had organized the digital filing system that housed years of client preferences and project histories according to my own personal methodology, one that I had never fully documented, because no one had ever asked. At 8:05 a.m., Jennifer from accounting hurried over to my old desk, looking frazzled. Lisa, oh. She saw the empty space and her face fell. She later told me the vendor payment system was frozen, asking for authorization codes she didn't have. At 8:15 a.m., Marcus from the creative team appeared, laptop in hand. Lisa, I can't access any of the client asset files for the Henderson presentation. The system says I don't have permission. He looked around, bewildered, at the empty chair. By 8:30 a.m., my old desk had become command central for a growing crisis. 3 more people had come by with various system issues, all tied to my deactivated access. At 8:45 a.m., Dana finally rushed in, looking harried and clutching her phone. She had obviously been fielding calls from home. She beelined straight to my desk, her earlier smugness replaced by barely controlled panic. "Lisa, we need to talk," she said to the empty space, before realizing I wasn't there. The office descended into complete chaos. Dana was fielding angry calls from clients while simultaneously trying to coordinate with IT to restore access to critical systems. The Henderson Industries presentation had been delayed twice, and I could just imagine the sweat beading on her forehead as she struggled to manage multiple crises at once. Around noon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I had a good idea who it was. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a frantic message from Dana appeared. "Lisa, please call me. It's an emergency. We can't access anything. We need your help." I took a slow sip of my wine, enjoying the delicious salmon Patricia Chun had recommended. The calls and texts continued all afternoon. The tone grew more desperate with each one. By 4 p.m., Dana appeared at my new office building. I had agreed to meet her in the lobby, curious to see the full extent of her desperation. She looked defeated, her perfect blazer rumpled, her makeup slightly smudged. "Lisa," she began, her voice strained, "I think we may have made a mistake with the timing of your departure." "Oh," I asked, feigning mild interest. "Is there any possibility of reconsidering?" she pleaded. "Or a consulting arrangement? Just to help with the transition. We'd be willing to discuss a significant increase in compensation." I looked up from my phone, where I had been responding to emails from 3 other former clients who had heard about my availability. "That's very generous," I said calmly, "but I've already committed to BrightPath. And honestly, after 12 years here, I'm excited about the fresh start." I let the implication hang in the air. BrightPath was their biggest competitor. I could see her mind racing, calculating how many clients knew me personally and might consider following me to my new firm. The phone at her hip buzzed incessantly. My non-compete agreement with BrightPath wouldn't allow that. I lied smoothly. There was no non-compete, but Dana didn't need to know that. Her eyes widened as she processed what I had just told her. The color drained from her face. "You've accepted another position?" "Oh, yes," I said, a triumphant smile finally breaking through. "I should have mentioned that sooner. BrightPath Creative Solutions offered me a director role. I'm very excited about the opportunity." I didn't need to spell out the rest. Dana knew. She knew that not only was I leaving, but I was taking my relationships, my knowledge, and potentially a significant chunk of their business directly to their competition. As I packed up the last of my personal items from my old desk the next day, I reflected on how perfectly everything had fallen into place. Tomorrow, I would officially clean out my desk and say goodbye to Hallwell and Knox forever. On Monday, I would start fresh at a company that valued my expertise. And in between, I would begin consulting work that would pay me more in 6 months than I had made there in 2 years. Sometimes, the best revenge was simply letting people discover their own mistakes. As I walked out of Hallwell and Knox for the last time, a box of my belongings in hand, I realized that their short-sighted decision to eliminate my role had given me something far more valuable than job security. It had given me the courage to finally claim my worth in an industry that had undervalued me for too long. The journey from loyal employee to empowered entrepreneur had taught me that sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply succeeding beyond their wildest imagination.